Hello, Juan. Buenos días. ¿Cómo
Hey, buenos
estás?
días. Very good. Muy bien. ¿Cómo estás tú?
Good, good. So here I am in Chicago, and you are in Seattle.
Right.
Where you're stationed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm in
welcome,
I'm in Bainbridge Island, just in front of Seattle. Yeah.
Bainbridge Island. Oh, that's beautiful, beautiful. I've been there a couple of times, and it's always a nice day trip. When I'm there.
Yeah. It's a nice place
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so welcome everyone. Welcome to Designing Healthy Environments. My name is Alicia Ponce, and we are architects and sustainabilities at APMonarch. And today I am so happy to have Juan Rovalo join us. And we're going to talk about ecology in planning and development. Juan, he is, let me see, you are a senior ecologist, right?
Hmm.
Senior ecologist at
Correct.
Biohabitats. And, I was wondering how many people are going to ask, what's up with ecology and architecture? Like, is that normal? Is that weird? Is that extra money? Or like, what does that mean? But I know why. And you're going to share why this is really essential in the way that we build today. I just, part of your bio, you're like, we're going to talk about your environmental assessments, right? In restoration and conservation and the importance of that in our built environment more now than ever.
Mm-hmm. Totally
So
agree. Yeah.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Juan and I met, I want to say 3 years ago, 4 years ago now, is maybe in Seattle for the unconference of Living Future. And we see each other annually. Last year was, or this year was an exception because it was virtual
Right.
because of this pandemic, but it has turned out into like a really great group, a really great network. And as you called it, a support group for those of us in this field.
Absolutely. Yeah. Much needed um, support team. Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So, Juan, tell me a little bit about the role of an ecologist in the design world. Um,
Right.
please share.
Well, I started doing this many years ago um, in Mexico. I was working at that time in academia, working in a lab of biotechnology. Um, and when I finished my thesis and I started working, I went to work in a ranch, and I have been always outdoors and connected as much as possible to nature. Um, But I realized that it's not a secret that one of the major disruptors of the natural world is construction and development, right? After agriculture, infrastructure and housing and commercial, and is a major driver of land use change and loss of ecosystems.
Mm.
So, um, so I I went back to the roots. When I started studying biology, my father, which is an architect, he gave me a book of Ian McCarg, like a very old classic design with nature book, right?
Mm.
And after going to biology and the laboratories and research, I was in neuroscience and in ecology and mycology. I went back to that book, and I realized that ecologists have a lot to say to planners and designers in order to make those projects and designs better attuned to the built environment, right? In order
Mhm.
to minimize the impact that those projects have on the natural world. And nowadays, after many years of practice, I realize that this intelligence, this knowledge, the ability to see what a given uh, place needs in terms of recovering ecological functions it's very useful to the planning and design process in several points. For example, the correct understanding of a place can help you to reduce risk in certain settings by reducing exposure or managing vulnerabilities. In this approach that nowadays is starting to grow as a trend, the ecosystem-based strategies to support functions like green infrastructure and blue-green streets and all this, but also can help projects to reduce cost in terms of strategies to alternate strategies to manage the open space and the distribution of the program of a given project. It can also boost productivity. And of course, it can become an asset for a brand or for a development. So those 4 points, they can be achieved through natural inspired strategies in many ways. So in nowadays, I believe that we have disrupted enough land on Earth that we should focus on preserving everything what is left that it's still wild. We should preserve it as much as possible. And then everything else, we need to restore it. We are facing the worst extinction rate in all the planet history. And we are starting to see with our own eyes the disruption of ecological dynamics that impact us in air quality, water quality. I mean, I was just mentioning you that we have been in a cloud of toxic smoke for the last weeks because of the fires on the west, right?
Right.
And that has been very, very bad. And this weekend is the first time that we can go outside and see the blue skies. That those are a rare commodity here in the Northwest, right?
Right.
And it's so important for your physical health, not only for your ability to breathe, but also for your psychological well-being, right? So anyways, Biohabitats, the company that I work with now, has this very specific and defined mission of restore the earth and inspire ecological stewardship. So we need to really accomplish the recovery of functions, because all the social well-being, all the people's well-being, it's rooted in an ecosystem well-being. So if we don't have that, then everything else will start to crumble and suffer.
Right.
So
Right.
I believe that it's essential. Any planning, any design activity, any development should start, as Sim van der Rijn stated long time ago, with an intimate understanding of the place. And that's what I have been developing and evolving in order to make it fast and make it usable, because that's usually the major challenge for design teams, right? As scientists, what we want to do as scientists is to know and research and explore, so we can take our whole life, right, and explore a certain place.
Yeah.
But in a design process that we have a constraint in time, in budget, we are always in a hurry. We need to be very, very sharp, very keen on making fast, make it relevant, make it useful, make it in a way that works for the process, for the budget, for the client, and bring as much value as possible. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you know, the way I see it is, if those of you that are asking why an ecologist, why science or biology and architecture, the way I see it, if we as architects are commissioned to do an opera theater, right, we call upon specialty consultants in acoustics, right? Because they understand acoustics and you want the best. And we understand the architecture, but we want to be able to get this project team together that will provide the best solution. The same thing if, as, environmental architects, we look at energy performance, right? So we work with engineers and we model the building to study the energy use, right? So that we can bring it down. Uh, as architects, we can't do everything. We have to be able to partner with people like you, with experts like you, to be able to do that. And right now I see that as just it's so essential to have that piece in a project, because we are, just as you were saying, we are in an ecological crisis, a climate crisis, and we need to be able to study the habitats where we are building, right? How
Yeah,
can we coexist and co-inspire?
yeah,
And we can do that.
absolutely. And you know, Alicia, even in the urban core, even in the cities, there are still opportunities to achieve certain functions.
I'm so glad you brought
Yeah,
that up, because that was one of my questions to you. It's like, what do you think in an urban setting? Because sometimes a lot of the images we see are in open prairies and,
right,
by the beach, or very big open spaces. What about urban settings?
right. Well, I mean, for example, I'm working currently in a project in nearby San Francisco,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, probably San Francisco are one of those places that every piece of land has a value that has increased tremendously in the last years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I am working in a project in which they are designing a large development for mixed use, for housing, commercial, industrial, and they are part. I mean, it seems that they already have a lot of companies of the biotech world interested of going there. So it's going to be really urban, really dense, right? But there, over there, following regulations and following the innovation, creativity, and drive of this team, they are going to restore and offer to the community a network of open spaces that is going to improve the conditions incredibly. So not only they're going to mitigate certain pollution that is on the site already, but they're going to also bring back coastal marshlands and other habitats.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, they're planning to make this in a way that protects that area versus the sea level rise and storm surges. So the beauty of this is that they are achieving stacked benefits. On
Mm-hmm.
one side, from the social aspect of giving access to people to nature and to experiences, open spaces, but
Mm-hmm.
also to the nature itself, in order to have corridors and places for habitat, at the same time of achieving protection and resiliency,
Mm-hmm.
and having a major development of urban setting.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be done. The only thing that you need, it's a lot of creativity and a team willing to work fast in that direction, you know. But it can be done for sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, I agree. It's just I was thinking that, so many things as you're talking about, what is the buy-in for teams to be able to integrate, that the research that you would bring, right? The research and the assessment of the long-term impacts, right? That
Hmm.
that we need to be able to see. There might be some upfront costs, right? But
Yeah.
then let's look at the whole picture, the whole life cycle
Yeah.
of what that means.
Yeah. Absolutely. And in that sense, that's what I'm saying about reducing costs,
Mm-hmm.
because you can achieve functions through ecological systems, functions that would cost much more if you want to do it just with a gray infrastructure or common practices. Um, so bank establishment, shoreline protection, storm waterways, water treatment. There's a lot of strategies that can be achieved by working with natural systems and species instead of
Mhm.
having only machineries and mechanical systems, right? We need to work together. And that's something I believe that is becoming a trend. There's a new book that the Army Corps of Engineers work
Okay.
with several companies. And the Army Corps of Engineers usually are very straightforward, very gray and strong and bold, you know, big projects of huge boulders of concrete and all this. And now they are thinking of ecosystem-based adaptation strategies.
Mhm.
So now there's a gradient between the gray and the green and how they can work together to achieve functions, right? So
Mhm.
living shorelines, right? Living bulkheads, protection to property and to infrastructure, but with a combination of gray and green processes, because the benefit of the working with natural systems is that they self-renew, they
Yeah.
grow,
Mhm.
they are more resilient, they can heal themselves,
Mhm.
they can establish with time, they mature, they get stronger, etc. Right?
Mhm.
The gray ones, you need to go back and rebuild them.
Right. No, that's an excellent point. I did look up the definition of ecology
Uh-huh.
and said, okay, let's get technical here. Well, not really technical, but so ecology is a branch of biology that deals with the relations of organisms to one another and to their physical surroundings. And that's probably a very general, definition, but it is about relationships, and in nature. And so what I was thinking, what occurred to me is that, do you think that, in nature, does nature communicate with each other to survive? Or
Well,
or is it like human nature where we need to, some human nature is like we fight, the survival of the fittest. How do
well,
we coexist, Juan?
but that's a very interesting topic because, well, first of all, ecology comes from the Greek oikos, and that mean home, and
Okay.
logos, which means study of, right? So it's the study of our home.
I
Uh,
didn't know that. That's so lovely.
Ecosystem is a system of our home, of our oikos. So
Mhm.
the thing is that we have been comfortable enough to believe that nature is something separate from us. And nowadays we need to understand that we are part of nature, and we have the power and the size of as humanity to modify nature because it's the place that we live in. So by doing what we do in our industry, in our homes, in our working spaces, in our production mechanisms, in our trade, in everything that humans do, we are modifying our home.
Mm,
So,
mhm.
and we have not been very skillful on modifying it in a good way.
Right.
So now, I mean, these times we definitely need to move in a way that we modify it in a positive way. And that's exactly what happens in ecological systems. So the fact that you go into a prairie, into a jungle, into a forest, in the ocean, and you see a huge diversity of functions and species, but there's no trash, there's no toxicity, there's everything gets cycled, everything is useful for somebody else. Every activity creates a niche for somebody else to take advantage. So if you see that in the overall picture, you can see that the most resilient systems are the ones that have more symbiotic relationships, the one in which one species support the other one in order to survive. So when Darwin mentioned the survival of the fittest,
Mhm.
in the British mind of colonizations and exploration spirit, that means to be the meanest and strongest and aggressive and the one that could eat the other one and dominate, you know.
Mhm.
But what he was mentioning as fit, it means the one that fits correctly in their place, the one that actually can provide functions in a optimal way for the other one. Yes, there is predation. Yes, there is death, of course, but even that support the bigger picture. The species that dominates and overruns everything else,
Mm-hmm.
that's called it will kill everything, including itself.
Mm.
You know, so the invasive species like that had overrun other systems have killed all the diversity, and that's not something that happened often in a natural setting. Only when we intervene and we bring rabbits to an island in Australia, or we bring kudzu in the southeast,
Mm.
or grasses, and only when we have intervened in a clumsy way is that we
Like
have created
the
that disruption.
pandemic.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, exactly that. The zoonosis, this ability of virus to jump to the human is because we're choking the natural world. We're choking the ecosystems. So the survival of the fittest imply the survival of the one that can fit correctly in their relationships with the rest of the species.
Mm. You know, and it's interesting because what you're saying, that how we intervene in a clumsy way, and the coronavirus is definitely an example that we're living.
Yeah.
But it is also the way a lot of us have seen it has created this pause for us, this time of reflection, and to see that, okay, we're all stationed at home, and we're keeping our health safe, and we're remaining safe, and we're seeing the cause of us, you know, taking steps back. We're seeing the air quality, we're seeing the water quality, and obviously what you're going through in the, you know, in the West Coast with air quality, that has natural implications, but we still have this pause, this opportunity to see that we can scale back. Let's reflect on how
Mm.
we can change our behaviors.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the issue, I mean, everywhere in the world, there have been examples of how nature is able to recover and rebound from disruptions, right? So yes, we do have that capacity of restoring our home and our places that we live and integrate with natural settings and functionality. The risk that I am seeing is that um, we are eager to go back to what we know what to do.
And we're going to go with full force, right?
Exactly. We are eager to just start the machine again and go for it. And it's very difficult to achieve significant change
Mm-hmm.
in ourselves and in our processes. Um, I mean, if we have been feeling something, it's uncertainty in this time and days, right? And that makes us very nervous and very feeling of vulnerability. And when that happens, we tend to try to grasp into something that is solid and secure, right? And that is a process that we know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe also that we need to reflect, as you say, in a way that can actually allow us to go into a new way of doing things. And that is why this example of the Army Corps and the book of ecosystem-based adaptation is so powerful to me, because if the Army Corps can change its ways,
Yeah.
that is a huge, huge beam of light, you know? I
Mm-hmm.
know that it's not perfect. I know that it's not complete, it's not finished. But the fact that they are actually saying, well, what about if we do it this way, you know? What if we change from this that we know and we are good at into
Mm-hmm.
something that we are not as good at, as that we are still developing?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that we need to do that. We need to shift from what we know we are good at, we know that it works, and the hit and beat and strong processes, often
Mm-hmm.
toxic and destructive, into something more restorative, or as they are calling it today, or people are calling it today, more regenerative ways on bringing ecology and design and human well-being and social justice and health. We can bring all that together. We need to put our minds into it, but that's what we do, right? As human
Right.
beings, that's
Yeah.
what we can do.
Yeah, and so I want to ask you, how do you, as an ecologist, how does your research then? Can you talk a little bit about implementation, maybe an example or two of, how you implement, how project teams implement your research
Hmm.
uh, into our built environment?
Sure. I mean, it's usually easier and better to do it from the very beginning of a project.
Mm-hmm.
Before designers, before architects, before planners have already committed to a certain footprint. Because usually what happens is that, and this is something that I always say, the scientists and the designers, we achieve certainty and assurance in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So designers, they achieve certainty and assurance by designing. They want to bring the trace paper, they want to put the plan, they want to start making volumes, they want to start looking at connectivity and transport, and they want to start seeing, imagining, and creating.
Creating.
That's what they want to do, and they want to iterate in this, right? Scientists, we need to research, we need to study, we need to prove, we need to see what happened before, what studies have made there. We need to know before we can achieve certainty.
Mm-hmm.
And those processes are in apparent conflict. Because if a project starts right now and you as an architect start to iterate and to put your volumes here and there and your streets and I am just looking at the place and saying, well, what is this? You know, what has happened here? What it was before? What are the soils? How the water behaves? What it's close by? What is related to? What is impacting this? What is impacted by this? How can we make it better? I am making all these questions. And when I come with a report that it's boring as hell, right? The architect already have a whole city over there.
Yeah, I
And
would
then
say, I mean, that's the old traditional way
yes, and
of
that's
planning,
my point. Yeah,
and I almost left the field of architecture. This was very early on in my career when I realized, what are we doing to our environments? I mean, the only thing I ever wanted to do in my life is to build, and here I am destroying environments.
right,
But
right.
but then green building, green building was an article I read about that, and it brought hope, and it
Yeah,
retained me into the field. And exactly what you're talking about, it's about collaboration, it's about
right.
specialty consultants, and it is about research. So those of
Yeah,
us who are in green building do the research, not only, to meet the function of the space of the building that it needs to meet, but also, okay, let's find somebody like Juan to be able to really provide a sound solution.
right. And I want to say this, Alicia, we cannot do it alone. I mean, I am not a designer. I am not an architect, right? And there's terrible examples of peers of mine, biologists, trying to make design, right? It's not good. And architects and designers, they are not ecologists. They are not soil scientists, you know.
Mhm.
Some landscape architects have one feet in one side, one feet in the other. And there's many beautiful examples of things happening the correct way, into my opinion. But we need to, as a scientist, I need to do it faster and easier. I need to make it in a way that works for your times. And
Mhm.
architects needs to explore, explore possibilities, but also allowing for this knowledge to come in and inform that design. So there's a quote of E.O. Wilson, which is a English biologist that I admire a lot. and he says that that development and stewardship seem to be opposing and conflicting positions toward nature, but they are not. What he proposed is that in the future, or in the near future or now, what we need to achieve is how this development and stewardship can actually reshape and reinforce one another.
Mm-hmm.
So the development should reinforce and promote the stewardship. And the stewardship of the land should also support and reinforce the goals of the development. So we need to achieve these two positions that up to now has been conflicting in the brain and in the mind of many people, both scientists and designers. And in nowadays, as you say, not the old school, but what we need right now is to be able to achieve these two goals simultaneously, after preserving, as I said, what is left of wildness, because we will never achieve the complexity of a wilderness setting. We are not as advanced yet in our knowledge or in our skills. But whatever we can do in the urban setting, in the rural setting, in a campus development, either you have a lot of open space or you don't. There are different degrees of opportunity to bring this ecological performance and settings and values even into the interior design.
Mm-hmm.
So I really invite everybody to explore this framework, this way of looking at things, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can tell that, there are some projects that are very intentional where the client asks for, green building certification, whether
Mm-hmm,
it's living building or LEED. And
mm-hmm,
so those projects right off the bat are special in that they're very intentional. Um, in the way the project team is put together, and whether it's based on actual performance, right, like
mm-hmm,
living building. And what I like to refer to these types of projects and working on these type of projects because the end result gives you a certain feeling when you're walking through this type of project. It's that feeling of comfort, of safety, of being integrated with nature. It is coexisting with nature at the end of the day. And we
mm-hmm.
see that with living building projects.
Absolutely. And if you achieve that feeling that you mentioned, it can, as I mentioned before, it can inspire stewardship, you know?
Yes.
And that inspiration, it's also a much needed aspect of our health and our ability to support conservation.
Mm-hmm.
We need to know in order to care, and we need to care in order to support the conservation and the cleaning up of our planning of our home.
Of our home. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because we only have one, right? That I know of.
Well, yeah, and right now there's so many topics that are so much information happening, so many emotions all over, with the elections, with the climate change, with the COVID, with the fires, there's so much
Social
stacked up
unrest,
things.
civil unrest. It's just it's all like a big, they're doing this to us. They're shaking us up and wake up.
Yeah, I believe so. And it might be different from each one of us. Everybody process these things differently. But one thing that we have in common, it was we all react to clean air. We all react to clean water. We all want to feel safe. We all want to feel this feeling that you have in the open space or in a correct planning, as you say, that you feel secure. We all want that. So
Yeah,
either if you believe one thing or you think that one
right.
party or the other party or whatever, everybody wants to have access. Everybody wants to be exposed to that. So ecological justice is another way of placing it, for example.
Yeah.
We need to provide access, we need to be exposed. Everybody wants that. No matter what party, what section, what side, we all have that in common. And I believe that we need to work in that commonalities.
Yes, and so I'm glad that you brought. I mean, everybody wants access, and it's just I actually was invited to co-author a book, and it's called Today's Inspired Latina. And there's stories on everything, you know, very inspiring stories on entrepreneurship, on foundations, on just, you know, Latinas making stuff happen. And I chose to write about what I do, architecture and designing healthy environments. It's a story about architecture, entrepreneurship, and my connection with nature. And
Nice.
in the first line, I say, as an architect, I believe everyone has a right to to a space with clean air, clean water, and comfort, a space that brings them joy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what
Absolutely.
you're right. That's what we all want, and equitable access. Then we get into equity, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, we are so far away still. We have so many things to do, right? But I believe that we need more of that voices, more of that. Not only people expressing their own emotions and their own grief, you know, but actually, as you say, making it happen. You know, people
Mm-hmm.
working towards that.
Yeah.
You know, because life, we need to be able to manage our own fear and our own grief and our own uncertainty, and then put our head together and make something happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crucial because we need, I mean, it's important that it really happens.
It must happen.
It must
Yes.
happen. It's not
Yeah.
only talk. We need specific projects performing and showing that it's possible.
Yes, and I invite viewers to visit the Biohabitat website
Absolutely. Yeah.
and, you know, continue asking questions about, you know, how the importance and impact of ecology integrated design, right, into
It's
what
biohabitats.com.
biohabitats.com.
Yeah.
And so this is a time where I strongly believe that we have the tools and the resources to be able to do this, to create healthy environments.
I also want to invite Alicia, if I can, in
Yeah.
biohabitats in the website. If you explore a little bit, there is quarterly publication called Leaf Litter.
Leaf leader?
And Leaf Litter,
Okay.
and Leaf Litter, it explores in depth different topics, and it has a very interesting information because it's not only people from inside biohabitats, but it's also interviews and research from other people. So the summer solstice edition one, it's habitat degradation and the spread of zoonotic diseases.
Mm.
So there's several articles over there, and there's more information to explore. So yeah, the biohabitats page is not only a landing site for expressing what we do and where we do it and how we do it, but also to share information and to get into a depth conversation about it. There's also a blog called Rhizome, and there's a lot of info over there, very useful.
Okay, I will definitely check it out. And yeah, I just get so much into this, you know, this topic. Obviously, I mean, it's what I love to do, and I love just sharing this information and resources to people. And I just hope that we continue the conversation. And, you know, we'll invite you back to see how the air quality continues out in Bainbridge. and we
Today is beautiful. Yeah,
no,
today finally is
that's really
beautiful.
great
Yeah.
to hear. That's great to hear. But Juan, I want to thank you so much for your time. This was a truly, very, very necessary conversation, very nourishing conversation for a Monday
Thank you.
morning to, kick off the week.
Thank you,
And
Alicia.
yeah, and so next week we have lighting designer Laura Roman, and she will be talking about dark skies and light pollution. So let's look
Nice.
up at night and let's look up at the stars, and because there's also something happening there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very
Yes.
important. That's a very important way of how to integrate development and stewardship,
Mhm.
thinking about the other species.
Yes. Thank you so much for
Thank
signing
you,
off with
Alicia.
Designing Healthy Environments. I'm Alicia Ponce, principal and founder of APMonarch, where we are architects and sustainability consultants. Thank you, Juan, and thank you for watching. See you next
Bye.
week. Be healthy.